Okay, so I just quickly asked for people to type in the chat what they're interested in using the GIS software for, or GIS in general for. And it seems like urban planning and environmental policy, public policy, is taking the lead. Yeah, lots of urban planning. Okay, very cool. So yeah, this is definitely geared towards, this workshop is really geared more towards the social sciences types of things. So as you probably saw, we're going to dive into the census data and try to map that. And yeah, I think we'll probably get started pretty soon. Thanks a lot for the responses. It's very helpful to get a feel for what we're trying to apply this technology for, because that's what we're here for, right? Creative cities mapping, that's different. I haven't heard that before. Anna is having trouble, I guess. Uh-oh. Yes, be sure to have QGIS installed because this is a hands-on workshop. So if it's not installed, please be sure to either jump on the QGIS website to download it. You could do so during the introduction part. And yeah, so, and here's the link to QGIS. Thank you, Brian. Yes, it's 3.14. So yeah, we prefer to have version 3 or above. 3.14 is probably the ideal. Okay, so yeah, we'll get started. It's 5 minutes afterwards. So I'll just introduce myself and then also introduce, or no, G1 will introduce herself after this. But essentially, after that, we'll go straight into the workshop. And if you have any questions, feel free to chime in at any point. And the chat is also a location that will be monitored throughout. So I think G1 can interrupt me at any point to let me know. Okay, so about myself, my name is Albert Kachapum. I work for the Institute for Digital Research and Education, and I kind of serve as the campus GIS coordinator. So I deal a lot with ArcGIS Online and other mapping tools that are on the open source world, like QGIS. I have a couple colleagues here, but essentially just giving this workshop specifically for social sciences, because I kind of feel that's where a lot of my interest lies. So that's a little bit about me. I have kind of some experience working abroad, doing participatory mapping in India for 2 years, as well as I graduated from UCLA with a master's in urban planning. So urban planners rejoice. And that's pretty much about me. If you have any questions afterwards, feel free to always chime in. We do provide open office hours. My colleague Yo Kawano and myself from IDRI have basically 1 hour a week dedicated to answering GIS questions. It's essentially a Zoom link on Tuesdays during this time period, actually. It's from 3 to 4. So you probably can't make today's, but next week if you have any GIS questions. You can also email us at any point for a consultation. And in terms of consultation, we have our amazing geospatial librarian, Ji-Wan, and I will have her introduce herself, who is coming from the UCLA library.
Yes, hi everyone. My name is Ji-Wan Yao, and I'm the Spatial Data Science librarian working at UCLA Library Data Science Center. And today I'm going to be a helper for this workshop, and I'm going to monitor the chat and answer the questions. And also if you have questions that need to be answered by Albert, I will interrupt him during workshop. Yeah. Hopefully we can enjoy the time in the 2 hours.
Yeah, and also if the questions are like very specific, I think G1 can also answer them directly without having to interrupt the flow. But again, if it's a very general question, feel free to put it in the chat and we'll go from there. Okay, so that's basically it for our introductions, and we're just going to dive in straight into the workshop now. So if you haven't already, basically gone to the box folder and downloaded the materials, feel free to do so. I will start sharing my screen so then we can kind of proceed on. So this material, this workshop material is all encompassed in the PDF. If you're on the GitHub, it's a markdown thing. But anyways, so essentially this PDF is there for you to reference afterwards. And if you have any questions or corrections, feel free to know. Feel free to let me know, sorry. So anyways, just the preparation is, make sure you start QGIS. So the way this workshop's going to go is kind of like, we're just going to go through the PDF together. And I'll go through the motions as well in terms of opening up the software and kind of just having the dynamicness of not just following the PDF straight through. But anyways, the PDF has a lot of screenshots and things like that. So hopefully you can reference it afterwards. If we run out of time, hopefully we won't. But anyways, the main point of this workshop is that we're going to be working with census data, and you should be able to do the following after this, which is essentially define what geospatial concepts are in terms of GIS, know different types of data sets, understand where census data comes from on the web, how to get it, download it, know how to add data, find attributes in terms of the data sets, perform queries and selections, as well as styling a map, and finally exporting it. So those are kind of the main learning objectives that we're going to aim for today. There'll be a short survey afterwards too, so if you feel like these objectives weren't met or this wasn't what you expected, feel free to, feel free to kind of just let me know afterwards in that survey. Okay, so just gonna go straight into this. So introducing GIS. So it has really two meanings. It can either stand for a geographic information system, which is basically the software and application, or it can stand for geographic information science, which is the framework and the way we think about geospatial data relationships. So, looking at the example below, rising sea levels would be an example of geographic information science, whereas something like ArcGIS or using QGIS to kind of do the analysis would be an example of using a geographic information system. This distinction is just kind of to be made because it originally started off as most things in science, so it's just like, being about the tools. But gradually, the tool kind of became more involved, and this kind of framework on how to think spatially came up as a result. So I like to represent this in this little graphic right here. So if you ever get lost, just reference this thing where GIS with the system, spatial tools, geographic information science is spatial thinking. All right. If you have any questions about that, feel free to chime in. But right now, thinking about this, we're definitely going to be focused more on the spatial thinking in the introduction, and then towards the part where we're hands-on in QGIS, we'll be actually implementing the GIS spatial tools or GIS information system definition. So we're covering both in this workshop here. So thinking about data and spatially thinking about data, there's common data types in the spatial realm. So you can basically break data into two types, either spatial or non-spatial. And then the spatial data has geographic information. And these are the following, which you may or may not have heard before: shapefiles, KML, JEO, JSON, and JPEG. I'm sure you've heard of a JPEG before. And you may think, oh, wait, why is a JPEG a spatial data type? Not just because they're geotagged. That's one thing that adds to their spatial data type, but mainly because in satellite imagery, they contain the images, basically the information that we use to process how things look in the world from the top down. So that's where JPEGs come in as a kind of spatial data type. Well, the following is non-geospatial data or non-spatial data, which you probably have encountered before: Excel spreadsheets, CSV files, JSON files, DBF files. So if you haven't, don't worry, but these are just kind of the common data types that you would, as a regular data scientist or social scientist, come across day to day. Now, this non-spatial data would have and could have geographic attributes like zip codes, addresses, city names, like I put down here as examples. However, the point is that when you bring them into a GIS application like QGIS, they can't be readily mapped until you kind of do some processing. So essentially, these are just standalone data. Whereas the ones above, the shape files, KML files, these have the spatial data embedded in them. So when you bring them in, even a JPEG, a special type of JPEG, they will show up immediately in the right location on the world, and you can go about your happy mapping way. Question? Oh, sorry, let's ignore that. It will be posted on the website in terms of so essentially, that's where the distinction between spatial data and non-spatial data comes in. And the point, again, is to just understand there's a distinction between the two. The graphic here kind of explains that, where you can actually turn spatial data into non-spatial data by exporting the properties of the data tables inside of them. And vice versa, with the geographic properties, like I listed here, zip codes, addresses, city names, longitudes, you can turn the non-spatial data into spatial data. But mainly, the point is they exist in two different realms. And yes, you can cross paths, but you should just be aware that these processes do exist. And these data types are different. So just talking a little bit more, the spatial data actually has two spatial kind of data formats, and that's kind of explained over here, where essentially the first three formats here are shapefile, KML, GeoJSON, is commonly what we refer to in GIS lingo or speak as vector data, which is the top row here. And then this JPEG, the satellite imagery, is referred to as raster, which is down here. So the definition between the two is kind of explained in this little paragraph, but essentially the brief simplification is that vectors are data sets that have points, lines, or polygons attached to them. And the raster is a grid of information, and it's divided equally into grids. Basically, if you think of an image, for example, that's why I use the JPEG. When you zoom in, you actually see those small little pixels that make up an image. That's exactly the same way that a raster is composed of. So that's how the kind of differentiation, or the two vector and raster data sets are different. Now, this notion of discrete versus continuous, if you haven't heard of those terms before in data science or just data speak in general, discrete just means that it represents one thing in the world. So these points represent a certain feature. This line represents a certain feature, like a river, and this polygon represents a certain feature. You can represent a discrete kind of data also in raster, which is what this box shows. So anyway, this is they're still using a grid, but this grid cell now represents a city, while these bunch of cells represents a river. And then the distinction between that, though, is continuous on the other side, which is ranges of data. So like if you think of elevation, for example, and this is the example with the continuous lines, which is contour lines. There's actually from this line to that line, there is a range of values, but it's just simplified to this contour line of like a certain elevation. And so you can kind of see that a raster is better suited to show continuous data because it has the ability to have that graded cell based on the resolution of how it's being captured. While if you try to do it in vector, you have to simplify it in this way with like either lots of lines or another way. Conversely, raster data format, it doesn't really handle discrete data very well. I mean, it's very often that you will find our data in basically the discrete form as vector because it just makes sense to do the processing in that way. So with the census data that we're working with and a lot of social sciences, the data will be found in vector. So that's kind of why I listed more of those data types. So anyways, just going into a little bit more detail, vector data, again, represents these things, points, lines, and polygons. The example here is if you were to draw a map to your house for a friend, you would basically use the discrete data such as roads as a line, shopping center as a landmark or polygon, and a house being a point. So raster data, again, basically talks or displays data on a grid, and it has really continuous information. So it's a range of information. And so again, here's an example of zooming into a digital photo, and essentially the pixels are another way that you can think about how raster data is presented. So hopefully there are no questions about that, but I will check the chat. Seems like there is some. Okay, no. Okay, so going into the next step, now that we understand that the differences between vector data, raster data, as well as continuous and discrete, we can basically summarize that we're going to focus more on vector, just because that's the nature of the social sciences. Now, why is that? So if we go into the G in GIS, which stands for geographic, that stands for the field of geography, and geography is divided into physical geography and human geography. So physical is about natural systems like, atmospheric temperature and pressure, and looking at the changes of like rainfall, etc. Human geography is looking more about like the political implications of people, as well as like things such as urban planning, public policy, etc. So the social sciences, which is again the basis for this workshop, sits within the human-made systems, which is the human geography branch of geography. And so we are really going to be working with discrete data a lot. Some examples of the human geography aspect of the social sciences is like trying to see how many people live in a certain area, like a specific city, or what language is spoken in a country. Like those are questions that human geographers would try to answer or look at. And so again, like I said, most of the data we will encounter will be discrete. So here's an example that I like to pull from. It's an example of the 2016 election. Well, kind of don't like to pull from it, but everyone's seen this. So here you have it. But essentially it's discrete data. Each state is a block it's basically a polygon. And then it's colored in a certain way to represent a certain thing. And so these boundaries are all kind of mostly man-made, except for the ones that are cut across from the oceans. But so you can kind of see where the human kind of role comes into this. So if you scroll down a little bit further in the document, the data itself is actually collected not at the state level because of the polling. That data is actually collected at the local ballot precinct. But it's actually summarized all the way at the state level, which makes sense because if you were to see like each individual city and color each of them, it would be kind of crazy and really hard to actually to tell what's going on. So that's why this data gets summarized. So how is this even possible that the little data is being summarized to the higher big data location? The answer for this lies in what I like to call geographical hierarchy. And so Aristotle has this kind of misquote sometimes where the sum is greater than the whole or whatever. In this particular case, the sum is the whole of the parts. And so what that means is essentially every single small voter precinct that gets the results is actually what makes up this California results. And so that's where this kind of quote comes in. And this is related really to the first law of geography. And I think it's the only law of geography. Correct me if I'm wrong, geographers. But I think this is Tobler's first law of geography, which is everything is related to everything else. Very profound. But this is the most important thing. Nearer things are more related than distant things. So essentially what that means is the smaller you are in scale and looking at how the data is collected and how the data is next to each other, just literally next to each other physically, that has more connection and the ability to be summarized than bigger things that are farther away or just something that's across the country. So, I mean, if you want to look at how it applies, let's think about that previous map and go down to this area. So this is the same map broken down into counties. So looking at the first law of geography again, nearer things are more related. So you can see all these nearer things in California are related because they're mostly blue. And lo and behold, California is blue. So now the confusing thing is, why is this Nevada not blue? And why is it blue here? Well, that answer comes to the Electoral College. We're not going to go into that. But the point is, in general, there is a lot of ways that the first law of geography gets applied. And the election that happened in 2016 is one example of where you can summarize these small data points to a bigger data point. And it's all based on this concept of geographical hierarchy. Moving right along, the data that we're going to be working with is actually from the Census Bureau of the United States. And here's the hierarchical geography, or the geographical hierarchy of the Census Bureau's data set. So you have essentially, oh, I'm zoomed in pretty much. So essentially you have the state, which is the biggest building block. Then you have counties that make up that state. And then you have a city that make up the counties. Sometimes they're unincorporated. Then you have census tracts that make up that city. And then each census tract is made up of block groups. So essentially this hierarchy is kind of like a set hierarchy that the Census Bureau has developed. And the reason why is because they drew the census tract, which is being attached to, well, they drew the block groups that are being attached to the census tract that are attached to the city. And so essentially what goes on here is that the census tracts will not overlap each other. And so, and a census tract that is in California will always be in California. Similarly, a city that's like stated to be in California will always be in that. There's not going to be an instance where really a census tract crosses a state line. And if it is, that census tract would have been divided into two census tracts, one being part of California and one being part of the other, Nevada. You could think maybe somewhere along the border, like Lake Tahoe, that would be the case, or someplace like Reno. But regardless, the main thing is that with dealing in geographical hierarchy, a lot of the data sets are able to be kind of fluidly moved from one geography to another. So I have another workshop that I give that's really about working between non-conforming geographic hierarchies, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just really going to go into detail about how the Census Bureau, because that's the data we're working with, is really structured. And so with the census, they also created the FIPS, which is the Federal Information Processing Standards. It basically translates this information from the state, county, city, census tract block group to a numbered code. So 06 will always be California, and 037 will always be the county, and then the census tract for this particular instance is 2653, and the block group is 01. This is actually UCLA census tract in 2020, sorry, in 2010, not 2020. That's the 2020 and 2010 distinction is very important to make because these census tracts are redrawn every 10 years with the decennial census. And so, yes, even though these hierarchies are transferable, they do change over time. So it's something to be very aware of, that this is only a kind of like a lateral hierarchy that doesn't take into account longitudinal changes in time. So that's something to be very aware of when you're working with census data as well. So anyways, but the main thing is with the census data, we have information about demographics that's collected. And the information that's collected at the census block and census tract level is statistically summarized, and we're able to answer questions about demographics as a result. For example, how many Asians are there in California? Very similar to the questions of who voted for X candidate in the previous example of the election map. Now, the other thing is that even though the voter data was collected at the precinct level, the summarization occurs at the state level because they all fell in that state and did not overlap. Now, going back to this overlap is very important because when you move from a lower geography to a higher geography and they do overlap, it will cause headaches and really be pain to kind of do analysis. So here's a little part where I describe that analysis of basically cutting the larger area into smaller chunks and then trying to see how much of the small areas fall into those pieces. We call that a weighted merge. I'm not going to talk about that in great detail. I'm just mentioning it here as a blurb. But essentially, because we're working with the census data, we don't have to go into much detail, and the headaches can be avoided when we're working with in the same kind of organization and unit. So essentially, now that we have this understanding of geospatial data sets and how the social sciences will kind of benefit from the analysis that we just talked about, in the sense, geography in the human geography side of things is really where the social sciences and geography gets connected. And then this geographical hierarchy is something that we really should understand because we are going to be working across different geographies. So now we can finally utilize spatial data. Hooray. All right, so now we're going to begin the first process of any research question, which is asking a question and then finding the data that might support or be related to that question. So here's the research question for the workshop. Which areas in Los Angeles have more than 25% of the population living in poverty? So this is, I probably should have put a time in 2010 because that's the data that we'll be using. But anyways, so we'll be using the following data: census tracts that are drawn in 2010, as well as county boundaries of the areas that are surrounding Los Angeles. Essentially, again, just to reiterate, the demographic data is collected at census tracts. And a lot of times the social sciences will have the data as standalone tables or also vector data. And really the best way to find this is through authoritative sources like the government, news organization, and research groups. So news organizations meaning like the LA Times, mainly because these are peer reviewed. And so you can kind of like trace the sources. It's nothing bad about going out and doing your own field work and collecting the data and presenting it. But really, when we're working with like large kind of scale analysis, you're gonna have to figure out the best way to get the information. And so essentially these kind of peer-reviewed sources are good places to start your search on. One good thing, website that I came across when I was doing research for this is this census reporter. It's a really nice website. If you pick a place here, you can click on it, type in Los Angeles. You might think like, why are we even doing this workshop if we have this thing here? It's kind of like a quick summary of all the census data in a nice data table format. You can type in anything. It's all open source. So you can always click the data and you can always view the data and download the data. That's one kind of quick little thing I want to share, that if you get overwhelmed by everything in the workshop here, you could just be like, at least I found this website and I can embed all this information somewhere else. And this is, again, all census data. So hopefully from the beginning now, you're kind of more equipped to understand where this data is kind of coming from and how it's being presented. Okay. The UCLA Library, G1, helped to create this kind of thing, I believe, which is a good resource for all the UCLA connected data sets. And then so G1's group maintains a lot of the social science data archives and all this other information. So this is another link where you can find great places to look for like census information about California, or doing population research in California, and as well as the UCLA Library's own data sets. All right, so now we are finally going to get our data. That little website that I just shared with you, the census mapper one, is kind of like a preview to be kind of just aware of what's possible with GIS and mapping. Now we're going to get really down and into the weeds. So like I said in the beginning of this part about finding data, an authoritative source like the government, LA County, is one great place to grab information. So we will go to their GeoHub, which is built on Esri, which is the kind of like de facto GIS software for government, really, mainly. And a lot of kind of urban planning folks also use it. So anyways, we're going to click on this link here, and we're going to click to jump into it. And essentially, now you can kind of see the step-by-step instructions. If you just scroll down here, most of the commands that you would do are in bold, like this, for example. So if you go to that search part and type in population and poverty, well, it's right there, and poverty by census tract, and click on that, it will bring you to our county, and you can scroll down. And essentially, what I describe in the document is to click on more for the general attribute, because as a researcher, you don't know if that data is going to be useful for you. So you want to see what's in that data before you download it, right? This is a small data set, but if you're downloading like, huge, large data sets, it makes no sense to download it and then look at it, the data. You should probably check the data beforehand and see, if it's the data that you want. So looking down, oh, look at that. Just like in my document, there's something that says pop below 100% federal poverty level. Okay, so then the A equals 100% below the federal poverty level, and then the D is 200% below. So I think this is the data that we need, because it has male, female. It doesn't have total population, but it does have ethnicity down here. So looks like we're good. All right, so this is the data that we need. We're going to hit download, and you'll notice that there's a spreadsheet KML shapefile. Now in the document, I ask as a quiz which ones are spatial and which ones are not spatial. Since I'm here, I'll just tell you that this one is the only non-spatial data set form type, and these two are spatial data types, KML and shapefile. So I'm just going to download the shapefile, and just click on it, click save file, open that, and then I'm just going to extract it into a folder. I should create a folder ahead of time. Oh, look at all my graphics. Okay, so I'm just going to paste the data in there. If the instructions a little bit better than what I just did, because I just kind of did a shortcut. Let me down here. I just right click here, extract all if you're on a PC. On a Mac, it's a little bit different, I think, but more or less it's the same thing where you want to click on something and then it will change the location path that you can choose, and then you can extract it. So hopefully no one has any issues with that. If you do, let me know, or let Jiwan know. She can try to help. But essentially now we have our data sets. Hooray! We have a little exercise to get the next thing, which is boundary. So you can go back to the top, type in boundary. And then we don't want just the LA County, we want the county boundaries here. So this is basically the answer for the exercise. So we have, these counties here. Looks about right. This preview is very helpful, so then you can see the data before you download it if it's the right area. I mean, if you're over here and there's a bunch of features, it's like, oh, something's wrong. But anyways, so this is great. And if the internet's down or if you can't download data sets, the box has all the data for you in this location, in the data folder here. Similarly, if you're on the GitHub, all the data is in the data folder here. So essentially, that's where you can get the data if you don't have access to that. So, okay, this looks like the right thing. We're just going to do the same thing, go to download. Again, we can kind of see, okay, it has these fields here. And yeah, anyway, we're just going to click download shapefile and then save it. I'm going to be lazy again. I'm just going to copy this and go to my workshop folder and go here. Okay, so by now, you would have two data sets. You can kind of guess that they're vector data sets because of the fact that they are polygons. They're not raster data sets. Oh, this is great. Okay. Anyways, so I think that's a good sign to move on. That we got the data and the site's like, okay, get out. So now that we have the data and we have it extracted, we can finally get into the fun part of the workshop, which is going to be starting on step 10, which is start QGIS and open a new project. Okay, so as any software, you just want to go to the start menu or something and then go down to wherever you find it. Or if you are on a Mac, it's probably the launcher. If you're on Linux, probably you can just type in the command line. Or you could probably find it through the launcher as well. Anyway, so now with the software open, you just want to click new project like this, and we have a blank file. Everything's all clear. So my document kind of explains the windows, that essentially the middle panel here is the mapping area. The left here is the layers. The top is the toolbar, and the right is the processing toolbox. And I put that order because that's kind of the order of importance. So if you scroll down, it's right here. The map panel is like the most important thing that you probably be working a lot with in terms of visualizing their data. The layer panel, though, is actually probably the important and the way that QGIS really works, because that's where you can order your information as well as access the information and style the information. So the map panel is just there as a good guiding but the layer panel is where the magic happens, basically. If you're familiar with our Adobe Photoshop or Adobe Illustrator, the layer panel functions in the same manner, where it's a bunch of different layers, and you can drag and drop the order to change. I will demonstrate that in a little bit. But yeah, essentially the toolbar is kind of a quick access to the tools that you can run. And then the toolbox we're not going to use today because that's really more technical, and we just want to get our feet wet with QGIS and not really get into video processing or anything. Okay, so with that in mind, now that we have the software open, we're going to add our first layer, and if you go down to layer up here and then scroll to add layer, and then you'll see all the types that are available. The main two that I covered already, which is vector and raster, are the first two. How nice. The second thing to notice is this comma delimited layer, and that's the non-spatial data type I was talking about beforehand, which actually covers the CSV file, TSV file data types. So you can bring in non-spatial data through this command here. So anyways, we're going to add our vector layer because that's the data that we just downloaded. So again, it's important to know the distinction, because if you don't know the distinction and you try to add your layer as a raster, it's going to not work, because you're like, why is my census tracts not a raster? I'm confused. So anyways, that's why it's important to know like that difference before jumping in to the software. But now that we know the difference, and now that we know our vector data set, we're going to click these little dots, and we're going to go into, not here, because that's a different version of the tutorial. Go down to here. And then this is the folder where I extracted everything. And we're just going to add the population and county. So you should notice that the shapefile starts off its life as a zip file, and that's just because it's a collection of multiple files. So rather than downloading 6 different things, they all put into one folder. And so when we extract it, we see that when you add it into QGIS, you want to add only the shapefile, which is this .shp. But all the other data is important. So just be aware that you can't just take that one shapefile and expect it to work. You need all the other things to exist as well. Okay, so now we're going to click open, and then we're going to click on add. And now we should have our first data set. Yay, this looks like Los Angeles.
Hello,
first, hello, yes.
Hi, someone said the speed is kind of fast. Can you just slow down a little bit?
Okay, thank you very much for that. I will slow down. Which part did I go too fast on so I can get back to that?
I think probably adding the shape file.
Okay, so let me go back to this.
It's everything.
Everything, okay. All right, let me slow down then. So with regards to the interface, again, the map view is where this is going to show up in terms of the layer. I will remove this, that we can get back to the same page. So when you're adding a layer, you want to go to layer here and then add layer, and you want to add a vector layer because that's the data that we downloaded. Now, when we go to that, you want to click on these browse dots over here on the right, and then we want to find our shapefile that we downloaded. And it has to be extracted because, again, it's a collection of multiple files. So on that note, we want to click on the shapefile here in particular, and not the other ones because they won't really work. And essentially, when we add it, we will see that after we hit open to select it. And then so now we can click add. Right? In doing so, the layer should have showed up. And so now that we have this layer up, we will do that again for the next layer, just to get that practice. in. So we're choosing now the county boundaries that we extracted. And then click OK and click add. If you click close, it won't add it. Obviously, it'll just close it. Like if I did that, then it's not going to show up. So if you wanted to see it, then we need to go to here, again, shapefile, and then add.
Hi, Albert.
Yes.
Can we check if the attendees have added all these layers? I mean, can we check this one?
What's a good way to do that?
For them, if they have added this layer, so can you see? So can you guys say yes or no? I mean, if you added all these layers, if you follow Albert, can you say yes? If not, we will wait, for example, 2 or 3 minutes to wait till you add these layers. So, okay, awesome.
Okay, so just let me know then when I can move on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems a lot of them have added layers.
Have not added or have?
Have.
Okay.
Is there anyone who have trouble of adding layers? Okay. Brian said, if you could pause after every few steps to ask if people have done everything, that will help.
Okay.
Is there, can you review how to add the county boundaries? Can you review how to add the county boundaries?
Okay, so for the county boundaries, just make sure that you've extracted the shapefile. So it's the county boundary shapefile. And again, if you are unable to download it, just go back to the website, the Los Angeles County website here, and then just type in county or boundary. So county boundary, and then you want to hit download and then shapefile. Right, and then after that, you want to save it, and then you want to open it, and then you want to extract it from there. So in extracting it, you basically can do extract all, and then you can choose the location for it, right? And just want to make sure the right folder here. So this is probably going to overwrite. I don't know if this may or may not work. Yeah, because it's already in use. But anyway, so it will extract, and it will show up here. And then after that point, you can go to layer, and then add vector layer, and then click the dots, and then click on shape here for the county. And then click on add. Are we good? To be honest, we don't need the county boundaries right now. We will add it later if you don't have it added, so that's not that important. The important thing is to just get this county census tracts for LA up. So if you are stuck on the county, that's fine. It's just going to be used later on. So we'll probably move on.
Yes. I wanted to do, any of you have any questions for now? Do you have troubles, for example, adding or downloading data? If you have, you can tap in the chat window. Otherwise, we're gonna move on. How about we extracting on a Mac? Oh, okay. Julian answered the question. Okay. So yeah, we don't see any questions from chat window. Yeah, I think we can move on. Albert.
Okay. All right. So now that we're, if again, you have any troubles, hopefully this documentation you can review. But essentially, we should be on the step now where we've added the data here, and it showed up on the same time on both the map and the layer. So you can kind of see how both of these are connected to one another. And you saw how when I removed one thing from the layer, it removed it on the map as well. So that's kind of the interconnectedness of the layer panel. So essentially, it's what drives the document and the actual map creation. So on that note, what we're going to do now is we're going to right-click on that layer, and I might actually just focus more on just going through the documentation this way, and then demoing it afterwards, so that it's a little bit it'll just be hopefully more paced better. So essentially, we're going to right-click on the attribute on the layer, and then we're going to go to attribute, which is this button right here. And then after we click on that, the window will show up with an attribute window that has all of the data in columns and rows. And essentially, it will have a cursor right here. And that's kind of where our data exists. So it's the same data that we saw when we opened the map on the website of the Los Angeles County. It's just now it's all displayed in the program rather than on the web that they had it there. So again, this green box is the cursor for our data. And it's useful because if we have millions of rows or thousands of rows and we might get lost of where we're located, that's where that green box helps to locate us. So I'm just going to repeat the steps now up into this location. So essentially, I'm going to right-click on the layer, and I'm going to go to Open Attribute Table. And then, oh, you're not going to see that. You'll see something like this. So if this panel is kind of in the way, you can move it around lower left corner. You can also dock it. But anyways, the most important thing to note is that this has all of our data in the columns and rows. And so we're using the keyboard right now to move around. But essentially, the green cursor is the, where you are in the data. It's helpful for when you're editing, which is where we're going to be headed to next. So are we all here with the open attribute window? Yeah? Hello?
Yes, I think they say yes.
Okay. All right, so with the open attribute window, we can kind of answer the first spatial question. What are the top 10 census tracts with males in Los Angeles County? The reason why I just choose males is because it's the first thing that you can choose that is pretty evident what it stands for, and you don't have to scroll anywhere. So when we do a quick sort, essentially we want to locate the column here, and then we can click on it to sort it, and this arrow will show up. Right now, it's going to start at 0 when you click on it for the first time. So everything actually, it's now sorting by ascending, which means from lowest to highest. But if you click it one more time, it will resort it from descending, which is highest to lowest. And now it should look kind of similar to this. And then, so we can see that the census tract with a lot of people, a lot of males is this one right here with 8,000 males living in it. To highlight that feature, we can click that 1 on to the left of it. That 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all these numbers here are not attached to the data. It's actually a QGIS function of just how it numbers the information. So essentially, this 1 is the top 10, or so it's a top census tract with males, basically. So I'm going to repeat those steps now. in the software. So essentially, I'm going to click on mail. Again, 0 is going to show up because it's now ascending. Now I'm going to click it again, and now it's descending. And then I'm going to click 1 here to highlight that. And you'll also notice that selected is 1 up here on top. We'll revisit that in a second, but just so you know that when you select it, something has changed. So if you click on that 1 and then you return to the map, you may see something has changed. So if you go to the map here, oh, it's actually a different color. Let me, well, anyways, when you bring in a software for the first time in a layer, it's going to give it a random color. And so unfortunately, this random color is very bad because when you highlight something, it shows up in yellow. And so I'm just going to just ignore what I'm doing for a second, but I'm just going to quickly change it there. We'll cover this later in symbology, so don't worry about it right now. I'm just going to pick this color. Okay. Anyways, so something may have shown up. I try to match the color here. That was a bad job. But anyways, so that may have be apparent. If not, don't worry about it because we're looking for this top 10. So to get the top 10, we want to drag downwards, or we can also shift and click down to 10. So this will highlight effectively all of the top 10 census tracts with mail. So there's 2 ways of doing that. If essentially, oh, there's some more questions. So I can either click here and drag down like that, or I can click on top again and do shift and click like that. So in doing that, if I go back to the map, you'll see that there are more yellows now. And so that's kind of the location of where the top 10 census tracts with mails are located. Are we kind of at the same point where we've selected the top records and they're popped up? You can give a thumbs up, or, and G1, you can let me know if. Oh. Is that, so are we good or no?
I think we can go. There's several people that some up. Yes.
Okay. So now that we've kind of answered our query of where the top 10 census tracts of males are located in Los Angeles County, again, these yellow highlights are very important to notice. It should be the same yellow highlights as what we have on your maps now. So these ones here. In doing so, we are able to finally answer our first question. So that's an example of kind of using a quick filter and selecting our data to answer a geospatial question. So before we move on to the next question, our next geospatial question, we want to clear the selection, and you can do so by clicking this button right here, and that will remove everything that's selected. It won't delete, it will just remove the selection. So don't worry about like editing the data yet, because that's going to be coming on the next section. So there are a lot of drawbacks though, because if you do selections like this, like using this dragging tool, you kind of like have to click properly in order to make that selection. Or if you have a lot of records, it's going to be a long time to drag down all the way. Even if you click and hit shift and click all the way down, it is kind of just wonky. So it's good for like quick analysis, or if you're looking for specific things, but there's better ways of kind of like selecting the data, which we'll cover in the next section, while we actually also create the data. So if we're Okay, we're going to go into that section.
Is everybody with Ever now? Good, good. Okay.
Okay.
Good to go.
Okay, so the part that we're going to be focused on right now is creating fields. And so essentially, when we go back to our research question of which census tracts have more than 25% of the population living in poverty, I mentioned that the field that we need to use doesn't exist. They only have the data in female and male population, and female population and male population that is in poverty. So what we really want to do is combine those to get the total population. So that's why we need to create a field. And we're actually going to create multiple fields. So this part's going to be pretty important. So I will go extra careful not to skip anything. But the tool that we have in this software is called the field calculator. And so the field calculator is what's going to be used to create the fields. And the first one we're going to create is the total population, which is the sum of male and female. And then the next field that we're going to create is the population under the federal poverty line, 100%, which is the male 18A and female 18A. Remember that this was on the LA website, LA County GIS website, that 18A stands for the poverty, the population under the poverty line. So to start editing our data, we're going to have to toggle editing mode by going into the pencil icon. So keep that window open, the attribute window open, but you want to click on this pencil icon now. It's the first icon that is on the window there. And in doing so, a lot of these grayed out buttons will now no longer be grayed out. And that's how you know you're in the correct mode. And then so after you toggle the editing mode, the field calculator will be available. So this screenshot's actually kind of a shortcut because I didn't click the editing tool. But anyways, the point is just click the field editor after you click the pencil tool. And so in doing so, a new window should pop up. So now we're 3 windows deep. We're in the QGIS software, which is one window. We're in the attribute window, which is another window. And then we're now in another window, which is the field calculator window. So here's the fields that we will need to populate. And this is what the field calculator window will look like. So I'm just going to get to this step. If you want to kind of get ahead, you can populate this, pun intended, as the way it looks up here in line 34. But I will just redo it right now so you can see where that is. I'm clicking the editing tool here. These things are now showing up. I'm clicking the field calculator now here. And then now this window has showed up. Now, my mistake was I did not clear the selected field like I should have. So it's actually going to edit one thing. So let me clear that selection by clicking that button and then go back to here to open the field calculator. So let me redo that again. So I'm just going to turn on editing and then click on field calculate. And then I'm going to have a new field here ready to go. So there's 2 options. You can either create a new field or update an existing field. For us, we're going to create a new field because the field that we want doesn't exist. So to do so, we want to give it a field name. So we're going to call it total pop, I think. I can't remember what I named it. Yep, total pop in capitals. So total pop like that. The reason why it's short is because you can only have 13 characters. So you can't go more than, that's the extent of the text. So that's why I use the underscore. You can use the space if you want, but I prefer using the underscore because I don't think your field can start with this. Well, Yeah, I don't know. It's just the way it is for me. But your field name cannot start with a number. That's not going to be valid. So, anyways.
Hi, Bert. There are people saying they cannot click the editing pencil because it's a grayed out. They cannot select it. Do you know the reason?
Good question. So you're not able to edit this button will not work? That's kind of interesting. Is there a lot of people have that error? One thing I could probably guess what that error is being caused by, and that's probably if you extracted the folder in your system directory and not in like a accessible directory, you may not be able to access the ability to edit. It's kind of like what happened when I was extracting a file into an already existing folder. There's like conflicting kind of permissions. So just be sure that when you did the extraction of the data set, this part right here, it's in the actual, like your system directory, either downloads or workshop directory, or if you've downloaded the box folder or the GitHub folder, the data folder should be fine. So anywhere in the data folder it should be accessible, but just make sure that it's not a protected folder. QGIS has defaults to the system folder for some reason. So if the pencil tool is not able to be edited, that's kind of a big issue. So hopefully that can get resolved. Does everybody else have that issue, or should we take more time to solve it?
Yeah, I think what you said was right. I just tried to add data into different folder. One is readable, another one is editable, another one is not. Yes, in the editable folder, the pencil, I can click the pencil, but in the folder that is not editable, it's grayed out.
Okay, yeah, so it's probably in the system folder.
Yes, yes. And also before you edit it, you need to select the layer.
Oh, right, yeah. Yes. So, I mean, hopefully you've had this attribute table up the whole time. Basically what G1 is saying is if you have another layer, like somewhere else, then the pencil tool won't show up. So I think that's what you're trying to say, right? But you have to have that layer selected. Okay, so just to make sure, we want to toggle the editing mode, we'll turn it on, and then open the field calculator. So does everybody just give a thumbs up if you have this field calculator open? And if you have it open, if you already do have it open, just copy the information here, which essentially is going to be the field name, total pop, again, limited to 13 characters. It's going to be a whole number because we can't have, we don't have 0.5 of a person or 0.2 of a person. So a whole number integer just means it's one whole entity. That's in contrast to real number or decimal. And then the expression down here is male plus female. So again, male is the field that is the total population of males, and then females are the total population of females. So a little hint to make life a little bit easier, if you just don't want to copy and paste, is you can scroll down and you can actually type in the field here to search, and it will filter out for you, not just the commands, but also the values and fields. And you can just double click on them to add it to the expression on the left side. Essentially, after doing that, your field calculator should look like this. Whether or not you copy and paste, or you do the other combination of searching and typing, you should have it like this. And when it's ready, you click OK. Any questions? I'm going to basically do that step here. So hopefully there won't be that crazy confusion, but if there is, let me know, because want to make sure that we're all on the same page here because we're going to do this multiple times. So essentially, typing in total pop here, making sure it's a whole number. And down here, I'm just going to search male, and then I'm going to double click male, and then I'm going to hit the plus for add, and then double click again on female to do that. So that should work. If it doesn't work, the preview down here will throw an error. So if it deleted this quotation, it will say it's invalid, and it will try to debug. But essentially, if it does give you a value, then it's correct, which is a good thing. Yeah, so there's other things that you can do, but essentially what you really want to be working on over here in the field calculation is just searching it and double clicking. And notice that the male and female for 18A and the next field is going to be here. So anyways, we're not going to do it right now. I just wanted to point that out. So I'm going to click OK. And so in doing so, it should create the field for us. So I'm clicking OK. Now I have to go to the right. So I'm just going to drag, or if you want, I can move like, oops, move like this. I can't move like that because it wants to edit. So drag it all the way to the right. And now total population will show up here. And I just did a quick calculation, like a quick sort. And I can see that there's some with 0, could be kind of problematic. And then there's some with a census tract with 12,000. So, you know, if you want to do the same thing as before, we can kind of see where the top 10 census tracts of people are. That's okay. So I'm just going to give a little bit of time to get to this point. Just make sure, again, click the field make sure your editing is turned on. And then make sure the field calculator, when you do it, you have the right fields, and then you click OK. And after you make any edits, it's always important to hit save, which is this little floppy icon. So, oh wait, yeah, I'm actually, in this tutorial, I'm going to add the next field. So if we're okay with that, the next field should look like this. But should I give some time to make sure that we all have this one good?
Yes, I think so. Yes, I think we need to give them several minutes for them to calculate it.
Okay. Yeah, it might be slow on some machines too. So, but yeah, so just make sure when you click the field calculate, you search. I typed in male here, and then just type because the male also brings up female. So that's where I did that. And then hit plus for add, and then make sure that this says total. As a matter of fact, you can even see my recent calculations over here. You can just double click and add them in. You can also save these ones for later on too. But regardless, the main important thing is to know that you can filter by using this top search. It will also give you a sample. If you click here, you can kind of see, okay, what does the data look like in that column. Okay, so if you are ahead, feel free to go ahead and calculate the poverty pop. It's a very similar calculation, but I'll wait for everyone to get to at least this point here with the total pop up. I guess in doing so, give me 1 second. Hello?
So Anna has a question that
Uh-huh.
her the layer window is floating. The layer panel is floating.
Okay.
How can I pin it to QGIS window? Can you show her how you pin the layer panel to the left?
Oh, so if it's like
Yes,
going
yeah.
around like this.
Yeah, yeah.
So if it's like that,
Yes.
you should be able to dock it when you hover over,
Mhm.
and that would happen. But obviously, if you
Yeah.
dock it over the browser, it's going to take over the browser. So you probably want to dock it underneath like that.
Yes. Mhm.
Drag it up. Okay, so hopefully we have gotten the total pop, or no. If so, we can move on to the next part, which is calculating the poverty pop. Actually, I think I might have added the underscore. I don't think it's going to fit. So let me just double check. Yep. Yeah. So ideally, I wanted to call it poverty pop, but I deleted the underscore and called it poverty pop that way. So anyways, but it's the same as the previous, except the only thing that changes is the field down here, because it's more or less an integer as well. And we also want to make sure we're creating a new field. And then for 18A, that's the values that we want. Hopefully we can run this without problems. Let me just try this again. 18A with the search still up here as mail. Okay, and then I'm going to run that by clicking OK. And so now to the right of that, I should have poverty pop. And then down here is a little bit of the note saying that in the GeoHub, it was stated that 18A and 18, female 18A and male 18A is population below the federal poverty level. And then essentially the last field we're going to calculate after this is the poverty ratio or poverty population percent. Basically, the number of people that are in poverty divided by the total population. G1, what would you call that? Proportion of population?
Let's see.
Hmm?
Oh, I just muted. Just muted.
Oh, okay. So what would you call poverty pop? What would you call a population in poverty divided by the total population? I just called it proportion of population.
I mean,
Is that an okay term?
Maybe. I mean, it's hard to say. No, I don't know. Sorry.
Okay. Oh, it's okay. No worries. I just put you on the spot. Sorry. Okay. Anyways, so I'm going back to the field calculate, and I just right now. So we should have poverty pop right here, which is again the total population, males and female, with the 18A, and then the total pop, which is literally the just total like population not in poverty. So in instances of this two data sets, you can make sure that it's correct if the poverty pop is not greater than total pop, because there can't be more people in poverty than people that live in that census tract, I believe, unless the census made a big error. So I mean, you can kind of just do a quick sort and see, is there any case where the highest poverty population is in fact over If there isn't, then we're good. But if there is, then there is an issue with our process. That's just a quick way to do a data check. Anyways, so that aside, we're going to now open the field calculator, and then we're going to calculate that field, which I think I called it poverty ratio. And most importantly, it is a percentage. So we want to change this to decimal. Someone got null values. Okay. Yes, very important to change the value to decimal number. The null values will actually show up in this decimal because we're doing a division calculation. So the slash will be the notion for the division. So for the search, we can actually type in, I think, pop, and that will have our two fields that we've created. And then so it's a proportion. So we want the small chunk divided by the big chunk, basically the whole size. Oh yeah, decimal number is fine. Wait, decimal number double is okay. So it's essentially the same thing. I think they might have simplified it in the other version. Double just means you can store a lot more decimal places. So if you go back to the tutorial guide right here, the field name, it should be decimal number. And then poverty range or poverty raw, poverty, not really bad. And then down here for the division, you want to click on these two. So after that, we hit OK, and it should generate the ratio of, in that census tract, how much people that are in there basically fall under the poverty standards of 100%. So you should expect the column to be decimals array. And then you shouldn't expect it to go over 100. So here we go. So this census tract is very problematic. A lot of the people that live there are in poverty, 75%. This one is problematic for different reasons. There's less people, but most of those people are in poverty. So anyways, you can see how I used the quick sort again to quickly look through the data without having combed through the entire data set. You notice this null here is when you divide something with nothing. And so, yeah, these will not be anything helpful. We can do what we did at the first exercise and select these to see, why these are null. If we do that, we can actually do that. This is not part of the tutorial. I'm just doing this so I can kind of share with you. You can see that, oh, okay, like places like Los Angeles Airport, LAX is highlighted, which makes sense. Long Beach Port highlighted makes sense. So people don't live in these areas, therefore, that's probably the reason why they show up like that. I don't know what this is. If anyone knows what that is, I would love to hear it. The extent of my knowledge is really just LAX here in Long Beach. Okay, anyways, so just to go back to the field calculate, because this is a pretty, this is a different step than before. We just want to do again, poverty raw, and then make sure that this is decimal. Go back to here and make sure that under the field it is, I just typed in pop because both of the fields that we want are in pop. And then you just do double click on poverty, divide, and then divide a total pop. And again, the output should work. It says Palm Airport. Wow, we have a geographer amongst us, or someone who lives in Palmdale maybe. So, oh, by the way, so I put my chat on different windows so I have a better sense of what's going on now. Oh, okay, nice. So Google Maps helps. we could definitely add a Google map to our thing, but we're not going to. That's a different tutorial that actually Jiwon can cover, because I think she has a tutorial that talks about plugins in QGIS. Anyways, okay, so we would have calculated this, and we have all these nulls. Again, this nulls was just an extra thing. We're just gonna move on, hopefully. Is everyone at that step? Do we have these 3 fields? If not, I can ramble more about things. No, you can't prevent the zeros and nulls, because that's the data, the nature of the data, basically. We are going to do something in the next step that kind of ignores the nulls and zeros. So just hang tight. Just yeah. I mean, there's really nothing you can do, because mathematically, when you divide 0 by 0, it will give you nothing, or it will give you a null. And for all intents and purposes, we're going to treat the zeros and nulls the same for our analysis. Although this one, doing so, yeah, well, you'll see, I think the calculation that I'm going to try and do is probably, I'm going to select out basically some of these in the next step. Can we get a thumbs up or a yes so we can move on? If you all have the 3 fields, again, just make sure you have those 3. Don't worry about the nulls and zeros.
I think we have 8 or 7 thumbs up.
Okay, is that a good amount, or should we set more time?
More sum up. Okay, let's move on.
Okay, so as I was saying, we can filter out the problems with the nulls by clicking on this little filter tool. It's like a little, I don't know what to describe it, triangle thingy, filter icon. It looks like this. When we click on it, another window will pop up, and it will look like this. And we want to click on the exclude field here. So when we click on this, and we want to scroll down to total pop, right? So this total pop is a field that we calculate. And so this kind of will allow us to filter out the data so that we can actually not have to worry too much about the nulls mucking up our data set. So what we're going to do is, in total pop, we're going to change it so that it is greater than, like this, 0. So then essentially now, if it's greater than 0 with total pop, we will be able to have that in our data set. And that should filter out all the things that really come up with that issue with the nulls and zeros in the records that we just calculated. So this is the example of a filter tool. And so after you do this filter, you want to hit the select features in order to select those features. After you do that, you can jump back to the table by clicking on this button right here. So it will also show you on top right here, the selected, like I kind of hinted at earlier, the total number of records that have been selected out of that selection. So that is going to be exciting, so that we don't have to worry about dealing with the null stuff. And so the last thing we can do after that is just show only the selected features. That's an optional step. But going back to the point, oh, okay. That's a feature, I guess, that you can change in preferences in terms of highlighting in white. I think it's like you can change how the highlight is in the table. Jiwon might be able to maybe DM you instructions for that. But okay, so I'm just going to do what I just explained, where I click the filter button, I'm going to scroll down to total pop. And then I'm going to click on exclude field and then choose greater than. And then I'm going to put 0 here. And then I'm going to click the button to select the features. I'll notice that the selected has already changed. And then if I go back, it should look somewhat like this, if not yellowy or white for some machines, unfortunately, which means you can't see anything, which is defeats the purpose. But anyways, hopefully, the settings will, I think it's under preferences for sure. But regardless, when you go into this part, you should have at least this on the top. It will show you what's selected in terms of the number. And if you wanted to click show all features down here, and it'll show only selected ones. When you do that, the ones without stuff like these will all disappear, because then it'll only show you the ones that are existing. And if you notice now, the ones that are existing have that 0, but it's not null, which is good. And we have all these other ones here. So if you do another quick filter, you can see that, okay, these ones are still existing. Is everyone okay? You can give a thumbs up. We're excluding pop. No. We're selecting pop values greater than 0. So anything greater than 0, i.e. 1 or above, we're going to select them. There's a reason for this. Trust me, I hope. But is everyone more or less have the selection? It should be 2327 or 2,327. Thumbs up. Okay, so I clicked on the filter button. No worries. I clicked on the filter button right here. And this window should show up. Oh, actually, hold on. I think it may crash. Has anyone had their QGIS crash yet? No. Hopefully your machine has not crashed yet. But mine's in the middle of crashing. Okay. So let me deselect everything first before I do this. Okay. So here. So it should look somewhat like this. And I'm clicking on, nice. Same. So I'm clicking on this filter tool, and then I'm scrolling down to total pop down here. It should look like this, exclude field. The exclude field, I think the confusion here is the exclude field is actually excluding from the filter selection. So by clicking on these things, this actually applies a filter. So what that means is if I did greater than 0 here, I can do other fields to filter based on, and I can do like, less than 1,000 or something for this. So the exclude field is just, it's weird. It's a default for saying like, don't bother with filtering this field. But hopefully that kind of clarifies what that means. So anyways, after I do that, I click on select features. And then it should select the 2327. It will select the 2327. And then I'll click the table, and then it should show up like this. Again, if I sorted from ascending, you'll notice that the nulls are not selected anymore. And then I will go here to select the features only. And then now only these things will be in green. Okay, are we cool? So at this point, we should have 2,327 features selected in green, and we can move on to actually getting that data out. Yeah. if you did get to this point, now is a great time to save. Let's hit the save button right here. May take some time because it's updating everything. Hopefully it doesn't take that long. So if you want to move back to the table, you want to click the button on the lower right hand. My thing's frozen. It looks like it's this button over here, that one. Let's see. Okay, so we should have this selection more or less ready to go. And we have saved it. Now we can stop editing by turning off the pencil. So now this little bar should be gone down here. And these things should be grayed out again. Now if I go back to the map, this stuff in yellow is what our selection is. Don't worry about it. But we're going to go to the next section right now, which is saving data sets. So, oh, I don't know why the screenshot looks like that. So just ignore that screenshot. Anyways, we want to right click on our layer and we're going to go to export. So after we right click, oh, well, let me just take a step back. In saving our data sets, we're going to save it as a shapefile, which is a spatial data set, or spatial data type, and then a CSV file, which is a non-spatial data set. Those are the two formats we're going to save it out as. And this is the selected records. So essentially, we're going to filter our data so that we don't have the nulls in it. So for exporting a shapefile, we're going to right click on the layer. And then we're going to go to export and then save selected features as. Not the top one. If you choose the top one, you're going to select, or you're going to export everything. We want only the selected features, which is the second one. So in doing so, we want to choose the Esri shapefile format. And basically, sorry, this window will show up, save vector layer as. And then we want to click on the dot to browse to an accessible location. Again, this is very important because if you don't click on the dot and find an accessible location, you're going to actually end up saving in the system directory, which will not allow you to do so because QGIS just defaults to it. So be sure to click on the dots. Make sure this check mark is there for save only selected features. And now the important thing here is we want to select fields for export and kind of like their type. So click on this button. So it's a very hidden button. And in doing so, what this does is we don't need all this extra data. Like all these columns here are kind of useless now because we have the columns that we need, right? Like all this stuff is useless unless we want to do information on like ethnicity, which I didn't collect or put into a field. But the only ones that we're interested in for our question is total pop, poverty pop, and poverty ratio. So we only need these three. That's why we're going to deselect all the fields and only select the ones that we're interested in. You notice that when you click this button, all the check marks disappear on the left here. And then like that, no more check marks. And then we want to keep the tract because that is the actual like value for the census tract. If we don't keep that, then it's going to be hard when we use the non-spatial export to deal with that number, to deal with the like what the census tract is. Because if you just have the values, we don't know what the poverty ratio is or these values are in relation. So the question is accessible location. Let me just, I'll get back to that when we, just 1 second. But essentially, we just want to save the tract here. Ignore the mail, that was a leftover thing, so just ignore that. But we want to scroll down and check total pop, poverty pop, and poverty ratio. So those three fields we want to have checked. And after that, you would click OK and it'll save the file. So it should look something like this when you're done. Now going back to the question about accessible file, I will get to that point when I show it live now. So essentially, I'm going to right click here, go to export, save the selected features as, and make sure it might default to geo package. So just go to shapefile. You can again click on format to do so. You want to click on this ... and you want to choose a directory that you have access to. And then so my first, what do I just call this? LA County total poverty. And then click save. And then so doing so, that saves it in an accessible location. So it's not inside a system directory, it's somewhere that's like accessible, you can write to it. Now I want to click on this little line, select fields to export. And then I want to deselect everything. And then I want just the census tract, so click on that. I'll update, we don't need the mail, so ignore that. And then scroll down to the bottom where it says total pop, poverty pop, and poverty ratio. And then you just want to click OK. So it should look more or less like this. You may have an error with the CRS. Hopefully you don't, but if you do, it just means it wants a coordinate reference system. And if so, just choose the default. But hopefully you won't have an issue with that. So when you click OK, it will add it to the map. And that's because when I did that, I left this check mark down here, add save file to map. So now we have a new shapefile that we created. If you open the attribute table, it will be very simple. It will have the census tract, total pop, and poverty ratio. Great. So for that, we can go on to the next step. Oh, should I get some time so we can make sure we're all on the same page? So it should look, again, the export for the Azure shapefile should look something like this, where the format's the shapefile, file name's up there, and then you want to make sure you deselect everything and just choose the fields that you're interested in. Location should be editable. Oh, yeah. Okay. So one last thing I'm going to do regarding the next like saving is for the CSV file. It's very similar, where we want to right click. Oh, I called it poverty in LA. Oops, let me do that. Poverty in LA County. It's got the same. Deselect, doing the same process. This is just, I'm just redoing what I just did because I named it differently. Just choosing total pop, poverty ratio, clicking OK, adding it to the map. Okay, so just remove that there. Okay, so it should look like this, more or less. Now, if you right click on this again and go to Save Features As, instead of Format Shapefile, you can choose CSV file. So right click again on the layer, the new one, and then click. Now notice that you can't choose the bottom one because we didn't select any features in that new shapefile. Only the bottom one does. So for Save Features As, you want to click on this one now. It will save everything. Choose the CSV. And then after doing so, you can fill out, I mean, you want to make sure you click on that, the dots again to choose a different field, location for the CSV file, and then click OK. So I'm just going to do that. Poverty in LA. CSV. Oh, I don't have to do CSV. Whoops. Poverty. key. You can optionally include the add up to the map. You don't need to, because we're not really going to be working with it. But if you do, leave it like that. Click OK. It will add as a table. One thing you should know about tables in QGIS is when you try to edit. Oh, actually, that doesn't work. Okay, never mind. Nothing. Typically, you won't be able to edit CSV files. I don't know why you can edit this one, but that's okay. That's a good thing. All right, so having done so now, you should have this, it should look somewhat like this. Basically, your layer should look kind of like this, different colors probably. Now we know how to do an export of a spatial and non-spatial file type. And then if you open the attribute windows for both, it should be more simple, a lot simpler than the original one. So the original one looks like this. Oh, dang it. It looks like that, basically. Long and kind of not needed. I don't know why it's doing that, but that's okay. While it's giving a hang. Now we're, within the last 10 minutes, we're finally going to symbolize our maps. So essentially, symbolizing our map means creating a map that represents some kind of fields and some data types. So essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to right-click on the layer, because that's the location where we can edit things on how it's displayed on the map. So we right-click on the poverty and LA layer, which is what we named it. You could have named it something different, but just on the new layer that we created, just right-click on it, go to Properties, and then click on Symbology. So basically, the layer window properties, sorry, the layer properties window should show up. It should have the layer name on top with a pipe and then Symbology. If you're under a different field, just make sure to click on it on the left side. And in doing so, this window should pop up with the fill and simple fill. And when you get to this point, you can click on simple fill, which is the lower button, and then click on fill color, which is basically when you click on simple fill, it will add more options down here, and it will show up like this. And then you can click on fill color. And we want to enter this color here, which is UCLA's blue color. You can also choose a color picker. There's a bunch of different colors. But when you pop in this, this is basically a hexadecimal color. You can put it in the HTML notation right here. And then if you click OK, it will accept that and pop up like that. So I'm going to stop here and redo that steps just so that we're on the same page before going to the next part where we're getting rid of the stroke. So essentially, we close these windows. Okay, so in the poverty in LA County layer, notice that this layer is on top. If it was on bottom, it would be yellow and highlighted. But since it's on top, it's the layer that we're seeing immediately. So I'm right-clicking here, going to Properties. You may be in a different tab. You may be Source, maybe Information. You want to click on Symbology. And then you want to click Simple Fill. And then you want to go to Fill Color. And then you can copy and paste that fill here. Hexadecimal. And paste it into here. And then click OK. It should show up like this. So, you know, if you want to choose a different color, feel free. You can just drag it around the color wheel. I just opted for the UCLA color. So I'll give everyone like a minute to get to this part. If you get ahead, the next thing you want to do is just change the stroke color to none, to no pen. This is because there's a lot of census tracts. And so if you have a stroke, it's going to kind of like overlap with each other a lot when you're at the zoomed out level. So let me zoom out. It's like this. It's no good when it's like that. So it's better to just not have a stroke at all at this level. So let me redo those steps again. I'm going to Properties, click on Symbology, click on Simple Fill, click on Fill Color, enter it here. paste in the color that I wanted. Click OK. And then now I'm doing the same thing with stroke style. I'm just going to click no pen. That. Oh, wait a second. Change the opacity. Okay, so let me just, yeah, so this is the opacity bar. Just don't accidentally click it. If you do, you might make your things transparent. Anyway, so HTML annotation should be like that. The no pen should be good. Now if we click OK, I think that's the next step. Yep. If you click OK, finally something exciting happens. We got our map with our purple things, which are no good. We will take care of that in a second. But it should look like this with no boundaries kind of highlighted. Now there are actually, you can see a little bit, some of the lines, and that's just because of the way they were drawn. For some reason, the census tracts aren't completely contiguous, which means they aren't all touching. So anyways, at that point, it should look something like this. So we can change the symbology of the bottom layer as an exercise, basically of this purple. The quickest way, I think I didn't explain it. You could right-click on the rectangle here. I share this later on. You can right-click on the rectangle here, go to Style, and then you can actually change it this way. And the nice thing about this is that you can see it change on the map immediately. So I went for like a whitish or like a grayish color like that. So anyways, you can't change the stroke. So that's why it's better to go into symbology and actually go into fill and then change the stroke this way, like that. Anyways, that's an exercise. I know we are running out of time, so the last section I just wanted to cover before we stop is just this notion of scaling the maps around with the, like basically choropleth versus categorical maps. So a choropleth map is when you are using numerical data, very important, to have one color gradient or two color gradient to basically represent your features. A categorical map is when you use basically text or groups of features and style it in different diverging colors. So different, they're not one single shades of a color. So a choropleth only works for, again, numerical data. Categorical maps works for numerical, but really it's designed for things like names, language, spoken, religion. These numbers don't have a numerical association. My example here is if someone were to ask you what's the average median or mode of a city name, that would make no sense. Like, how can you give me the mean city name? I mean, mean city name meaning of a name field like that has just only names in it. What's the mean? You could translate that into a count of certain number of like, okay, how many times is San in a name, but you have to actually convert that. You can't just take that text and turn that into a color ramp like this. So that's why a choropleth is really only for numerical data, with categorical maps used for various like other data types. So essentially, that's the main distinction I kind of want to leave us off with, because when we do the symbolization, the exercise goes down into talking about how we can change our symbology through essentially the symbol here by clicking single symbol. And then I'm just going to, well, I can show you. So when you click on it, there's basically categorized and graduated. So, and graduated is the choropleth. And so when we're talking about choropleths in QGIS, it's the graduated option here for the fields. And then the categorized is the stuff on top. And you can kind of see that even the colors that they're showing is the same, where the categorized has different colors and the graduated has the color ramp. Okay, so the rest of the tutorial kind of goes into choosing the right value and classifying it. I am at 4 o'clock, so I don't know how many people have to go and if I should keep going or I should just stop here. Feel free to type it in the chat what the preferred option is, because I can just either extend a little bit longer. Okay, so keep going, please. Okay, keep going. Okay, yeah. I mean, ideally, okay. Thanks a lot for dropping by, Maya. Oh, I will send out the survey. Actually, before you, well, yeah. Okay, I'll send it out as the email for everyone who attended. So, and that email will also have the recording. So if you didn't stay for the last half here, you can also just refer to that recording. And also do take the survey so that I have a better sense of what needs to be focused in on, and if things were helpful or not helpful, I can judge better. So thank you again for coming. I'll just keep going through. There's we're more than halfway done. We just have a couple more things to do, which is really symbolize and move on. So this should take 15 minutes, hopefully less, but we'll see. So we're going to start with doing a choropleth. So we're going to go click on symbology again, and we're going to click on single symbol graduated. So the top is just how you open that options, and the graduated is again for choropleth. And now if you click on value, you'll see just the values that we can choose from, and basically poverty pop. And that's, we're interested right now in just showing the poverty distribution, not the ratio, just the distribution. So we can click on that. And then when you click on it though, nothing's going to change. And the reason why is because you have to click classify. Because after you add the data, you actually need to classify it into different statistical schemes. I'm not going to go into the statistical schemes because there are quite a few different types, and I'm not the best person to explain that in the short amount of time. But just stick with the default, which is equal count. Equal count just means the same number of classes that you have, there will be the same number of values. So if there's 5 classes and your data is 100 rows, there's going to be 20 rows in each class. If it was 4 classes, then there would be 100 divided by 4. I am not good at math. I'm thinking it's 25. 25 per each. That's what the quantile does. So essentially, it's going to give a distribution that's kind of like just equal across the map with regards to color. So when you do it, it's going to actually show up like this. You have these 5 different classes. You can actually click a histogram to see the data, and it will, if you're statistically inclined, you can see how the data is in terms of if it's skewed to the left of the average or skewed to the right of the average, and decide which mode to use there. But I'm not getting into that. So just so you know, that's there as a histogram option. But you just want to click on classes to reduce. I like to go to 4 because it kind of makes it pop more. So that's why I enjoy, like the visualization works better with 4. And then so after you do that, you can choose the color ramp too. It's just a side note, you can change the colors if you don't like red. And then when you do click that though, you have to choose the 2 different colors. Okay. It's important to note though, when you have colors, that you should be aware of like color blindness. So don't try to choose colors that would bleed into each other very well. So when you have more than 5 classes, you'll see that happen real quick. So I'm going to go to the live portion now and just redo that. So I'm going to go to LA County. Right click properties and click on graduated. Click on poverty pop, and going to click on classify. Here are my 5 classes. I'm going to, if you want to see the histogram, you can click on it, the values. skewed to the left. I can lower the number or increase. So if I increase, right, it's going to be very hard for the viewer to see the difference between these two shades. So that's why I like to stick with a lower number. And you can just type in 4. It will automatically do it for you. Again, if you want to change the color ramp, you can click on it right here. You can choose different colors. If you want to stick with blue. You can also click on it directly, and then you can customize it even more using the first color or second color. Anyway, it's not that big of a deal right now. We just want to apply it. So we click on apply or click OK. And voila, we have our choropleth map. Congratulations. So, you know, the example I talk about in the document is that if I change this to equal interval, the map will look very different. Like I can, let's see, I can apply it. Right, so now it looks very different, and you can tell because in this legend, it's actually like the equal interval just means the breaks are equal. They're basically broken. They don't care what the data size is. They just care what the data values are. So anyways, those are just examples of how the style of the map can change drastically depending on which statistical mode you choose. Click OK. So the last part of our styling is we're going to now add back the layer for the counties. So I'm going to go back to layer, add, and then add vector layer. So this is where if you didn't have the county boundaries in, now you should have them in. You just want to click, again, the dotted lines and go to county boundaries. Click open, click add. Now you have the county boundaries sitting right on top of all our data. Definitely want to add that below. So just drag it, click and drag to reorder. It'll look like that. Now, I am going a bit quick, so hopefully we're at this location. But if not, just bear with me. Because essentially what I'm trying to demo here is that we're going to now create our categorical map, basically a categorization. And the reason why we can't use the other layer, this poverty in LA County, is because if you go into it, go into properties, and you click on categorized, essentially the tract doesn't make any sense to classify because there's just a high number of classes. It will say this error, which is not good. Same thing here. If you did this, same number. So we want to create a categorization of a data set that makes sense. So the county boundaries, if you open the attribute table, you'll notice it has a type. This is perfect for what we want to do. Like these 3 being in LA and these ones being other. We can also do by name if you wanted to. But this will give us more colors basically. But if you want, like, essentially we're just going to do it on type, just so you can get a good sense of how our data looks. So we're just going to go to properties on the county layer, and I click categorize on value, choose type, click classify, and then click OK or apply. And it should look like that. Now the white is fine because it's not like you can really, it's basically, the white is from the LA, the other layer that's on top of it. So don't worry about that. But the issue is we have this purple background, which is kind of in the way. It's not that bad. In the document, you can see that when you first add it, it looks terrible. It's like, well, it looks like this purple, it's fine. But it is kind of jarring, like I say here. So now we do the pro tip here, where you right click on the square and change the layer color. So I'm just gonna right click, change the layer color like that. Ideally, you want it to just be, faded so it doesn't get in the way. And this is kind of the concept of visual hierarchy, where you want the important part of the map to be up there, and you want other stuff to kind of fade in. Like if I chose something like a purple or a pink or like a bright color, it will be like kind of in competition with the viewer's eyes. So it's always better to go something darker if it's not that important to show. And the reason why I choose the color picker here is because the boundaries are actually important to keep. So I'm not interested in really getting rid of it. So essentially, that pro tip is there. There you have it. Oh, let me do one thing. Okay, actually, yeah. So you can hide the layers like clicking on this eye, and now the LA County will be visible. And what you probably want to do for that is also make it like maybe a grayish color. So it knows that LA County, this is a data set that has nothing, no population inside of it. So actually, wait, no, that did actually make a difference. Whether or not it's hidden. Okay, so now that we have our map, the exercise goes into doing it for the poverty ratio. So basically, we want to replicate this for poverty ratio to really get a sense of how it looks. There are some tips here. You can duplicate the layer to work on a separate layer. When you do duplicate the layer, so if I duplicate this layer, the one that gets copied is hidden. So that's where the eye thing comes in handy, where if you click on the eye, it will hide the layer, turn up the hidden one, which is the copy. I can right click, go to properties again. Now instead of poverty pop, I can choose poverty ratio. We click the classify, notice that it's now percentage. Click OK. Now you notice that there is the percentage here, and the map looks a bit different. So if you toggle on and off the eye, you can see the differences in how the normalization, or basically the proportion, affects the way the numbers look. That also is in effect because of the way we choose to statistically show our map. But essentially, if you go down to the bottom here, you'll see that this is quite big. That is 20% to 70% of our people living in poverty. That's a huge ratio. I mean, obviously, anything above 25 is what we're interested in. So that's kind of what we're getting at, but not quite. What we can do is we can choose this here, and we can just choose the class boundary to be 25. Oops. Just type it in there to make it 25. That will automatically change everything if we hit apply. Now, anything in red here is essentially what we're looking at. Anything in red here, dark red, is what we're looking at as a kind of our analysis. Now, that red is not as clear, so we can do the same thing to make it darker. There you go. Now we have kind of the answer to our question of where locations in the LA County that have a population of 25% or more living in poverty. So finally, we can move to the last part, which is exporting our map. So to export our map, you just want to go to toolbar, project, new print layout, which is right here under project. Give it a name or not. And then it's another window that pops up, and you want to add a map by clicking on this icon here. And then you want to drag it across somewhere on the canvas. And then the same thing is you want to click on the text tool, which is next to the map, one below or two below, and then drag it on top to create the title. So I'm going to do that right now. Project, new print layout, Los Angeles poverty. And then I will click on the map, drag it like this, see how it kind of snaps. And then I will do the same thing with text, drag it like this. Now I have a text thing. The properties here it should be docked. I don't know why it's not docked. Properties here should be like that. It might be in the middle. It's probably in the middle. Like that. You can change that to the part, let's see, to, oh, there it is. Areas in Los Angeles, yeah, that thing, which is just the title of our map, basically. Okay, and the last thing we will do is increase the font size like that. We scroll to do that, click on center to centerize it, put it in the center of our map. And finally, we add our mappers tool that we need to have, which is a legend, which is down here. Ignore the font thing. Legend is over here on the left. We will drag and add it. Like that. Should look like that. So click. Map looks a little bit different. I'm gonna put it on top here. We noticed all these extra layers here that aren't shown because it just adds everything. So we want to fine tune it by clicking on the legend. And then we want to uncheck auto update like that. That'll give us more control. And then we also want to change the layer to census tract of more than 25% living in poverty. That will give us a better legend title than what it is right now, which is poverty in LA. So let me do that. Click on legend, uncheck auto update. I'm going to right click and hide the stuff we don't really need. And so right click and hide. And I actually want to hide this whole group. Oh, I think I have to. Oh, that didn't work. So yeah, I guess I have to hide it one by one. It's probably better to just like not even add that in here. But I don't know why. Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, the last field there, you want to hide. Well, okay, I don't know why that's not hiding either. Okay. Anyways, so in poverty in LA County, just change that name. So by clicking on it, paste it in there. There's that. Okay, I really don't know why I can't delete this, but that's okay. I think I had to go into the software. I'm just going to remove it. Bye. Okay. Okay, there you go. Yeah, I don't know why. Okay, there. So there, I just deleted the extra layer, changed the type legend like that, added the county boundaries. I'm just going to pop it in, make it a little bit. Oh, it's not going to resize. Okay, let me go back to the map view again. So you can see how the map view is connected to the layout view. So I zoom out. It should update. If it doesn't update, you can click on this refresh. Oops, refresh. No, that's weird. This map should refresh. I don't know why it's not refreshing. Okay, we just re-add then. Okay, that's weird. Like, okay. Oh, interesting. Maybe just put the map on top or below. Come on. Nope, not working here. All right, well, let me re-add the legend. I don't know why this is so, yeah, I don't want this is buggy right now. Okay, just add the legend, do that, go back to click on legend, hide poverty in LA, uncheck the auto update, hide the poverty in LA, click on that, paste in our title. Yeah, I don't know why this is here. Oh, I can just remove it by clicking the minus. Okay, I probably should have done that. Anyways, now that we have our layout more or less done, we can do layout, export as image, and we have our map. Yes, I do answer to that, or my answer to that is yes. So now with that, we have our map and we are done. You can close this, and final thing we can do. So how do you zoom in? You can either click on the tool up here, which is the zoom in tool. So you can click on it once will zoom in, clicking on the zoom out will zoom out. You can also just mouse scroll like this. Oh, in the print layout? Yeah, so in the print layout, it's actually connected to the, let me open the print layout. So if you want to open a print layout, just go to project layouts. So for the zoom in here, you actually have to change it on the map on the side. So if I zoom in here, for some reason it wasn't refreshing, but it should refresh. I'm hitting a wrong button. Yeah, it should refresh. I don't know why it's not refreshing. Is it because I unchecked auto update? Yeah, I don't know why. Let me see. Because if you zoom in like this is actually zoom in on the canvas, which doesn't help. We want to zoom in on the actual map, which theoretically there should be an easy way. Oh, hold on, I think I found it. Nope, oh geez. Okay, move item content. That just moves that, nope. Yeah, I mean, there should be an easy way to move it, but I just, oh wait, maybe pan? No. Yeah, I don't know what the easiest way to move it in. I definitely, like what you saw me do earlier was delete the map. Yeah, so you can change the scale, which is down at the bottom here.
Yeah, Everett, can you go back to the print layout?
Oh yes, ooh, my savior, hello.
I think it's a button on the arrow.
Which one?
On the left panel. Left panel.
Left panel.
Down. Yeah, that's one. Oh, the one under the arrow.
Under there.
Yes, yes. You can move.
I tried that one.
You tried that one?
Oh, okay, yeah. That's what I thought too. But then when I clicked it, it started moving the actual item. Okay. So it was that one, and then I don't know how
you want to move it.
No, this is correct. This is what they were asking for, I think. But I think in order to get a better, oh, here we go. Scale. So Jonathan said change the scale. Yeah, so you can, if you click on map, you can change the scale directly here. So you can make that, I think 8:0, maybe just an idea. Now I'll zoom it out a little bit. So you can kind of you can fine tune it just by changing the scale manually like this as well. So, I mean, I don't do much cartography in here. I do mainly it in Illustrator. So, like typically what I would do if I was creating a map, I would just export all this into like PDF format and then just edit in some other software. But that's a different discussion. But mainly, yes, if you're editing stuff in QGIS and printing it out, you can move item content and then do that. Thank you, Juan. That was very helpful. Cool. So yeah, I don't know why the legend doesn't like to be resized. Oh, it's right here, resize to fit contents. So if I change that, no. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too big of a fan of the editing interface here. But I just wanted to bring this up to everyone's attention so that you know how to edit on this. You probably don't even want a background color like that. So, I mean, you probably could, under background, just uncheck it. But if you do that, obviously the text becomes not seeable. So you probably want to make the text white, which means goes to font and text formatting, and then scroll down to font color, make it white. Obviously that's not going to be good on the, so something like that, maybe like that. Anyways, so that's basically your first map in a nutshell. Let me save, oops, let me save that. And, oh, sorry, keep doing the same thing. Save the layout. Where's the layout? Just close it, I guess. Go to project and then save the project. That's the last step. As a QGIS project file. Let's just save it there. First. Okay, so that's it. Sorry, I went over, but hopefully the documentation will be helpful in the future. As I mentioned earlier, this recording will be there for people to reference. This document will also be there to reference. So both of these are available. If you have any questions, feel free to follow up with, just to that email, as well as please fill out the survey so you can improve better. And hopefully there will be another workshop in the future, and we'll cover more material. I don't know if it's going to be a QGIS one, but I am giving another workshop in the end of the month regarding story maps. So again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate taking an extra 30 minutes to answer or to go through the rest of this. I wasn't anticipating going through this. I was actually going to stop back earlier. Thanks for hanging in there. I did kind of rush at the end because of that fact, but I do hope that this was mainly useful to get an understanding of what to use. Yeah, definitely in the future, I will probably go through the guide first and then do it live rather than live then guide. But any other feedback would be really valuable, so I appreciate it. Any questions before you guys leave that you want to ask while I'm still around? Yeah, definitely ice cream would have been nice. It would have been nice for my throat too. I definitely need some water or something. All right, thank you everyone. So yeah, expect the email follow up pretty soon, probably in the next hour. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you all soon again. Yep, thank you everyone. Again, much appreciated.